Hello, everybody. Thank you, Kimmy. As Kimmy was saying, I'm Tim Higgins. I'm Senior Solutions Architect, and we're going to talk about API Strong. API Strong is if you do anything with APIs, this is going to be a tool that you want in your toolbox. It truly is a one-for-all tool that you can use anywhere because it's web-based. Now, with saying that, there's a lot of benefits. It's like a Swiss Army knife. We cover everything, and I'm going to show you all this in this presentation today. We're going to talk about threat protection, real-time insights, 24/7 monitoring, custom workflows, team calibration, and integrations. So if you haven't done yet, go to apistrong.io, and this is the landing page. This is your home page you're going to come to. When you scroll down, you'll see the same topics that I just covered. Okay, so we're going to talk about threat protection, how it works with our Broadcom Layer 7, our real-time insights, which allows you to see how your APIs are performing and how they're acting. 27 monitoring with scheduling. We're going to look at that. And a really nice feature called custom workflows, where a lot of times when you're testing your APIs, most people can only do one API at a time. We can put these into a workflow and use something called global variables to allow them to work together. So we're going to look at all that. Now let's go up here. If you scroll to the top, if you haven't already, log in, register, it's free. If I click here, this will be what you land on. Now, this is my dashboard. We're not going to cover yet. We'll come back to it, mainly because mine has information here that you probably don't know what is yet. The first thing you should do, now you can do any of this through these, but we're going to jump with these pretty big blue buttons here. And I'm going to start off by making a project. Now I have APIs we're going to cover, workflows we're going to cover, but I want to start with a project. And this project is going to be Tim's developers. Okay. Now I don't like using white spaces. I guess I can here, or spaces, if you will. And this is a demo. Easy enough for me. And just like that, I have my project. Now you're going to see other projects that you have access to. Now I'm a super admin, so I have access to a lot of these other projects, but I wouldn't have access to your projects, right? Because that'd be your domain. Now with these, I can do things. I can edit them. I can delete them. I can also download them if I wanted to import them into another tool. Now, if I go over here, the next step I want to do, if I click in here, I can see I have no APIs yet. I can click here to create one. We're going to go ahead and click on this pretty blue button, and we're going to click on API. We're going to give it a few minutes to load. This is your API creation page. Okay. And think of it as kind of your workspace, if you will. I'm going to go down here and cheat. I'm going to grab this little API here. Nothing magical. I just need a good one, right, to work with. So I'll show you what it looks like. I'm requesting this by users. We just grab number 10. Nothing magic here, your basic API. I didn't create this. This is just a test out there on the web that we could use. But I'm going to go over here and I'm going to paste it right here. Now I could back it up and get all my users. I can get one users. There's a lot to this API you can do, which is really cool. Now with this, I noticed I'm in my project. I can give it a name. We'll say developers testing users. Okay, that's very common. And we'll say this is for my developers to test in QA. Perfect. Now we have this API. I can do your basic methods. So if you know your API methods, get, post, put, which is update, and delete. I also can do authorization. We cover all the basic authorizations like basic auth, bear tokens, API key, OAuth 2, and of course, we can integrate with your Amazon with the AWS signature. Now, just so you can see what it looks like, we'll do bear token, and there you go. So we'll go back to here. Headers, as you'd expect, I can pass in headers. One thing that's very important about the headers, if you notice, I got two kind of curly brackets right here. And notice I got some values popping up. These values are truly global variables. We're going to talk about that shortly, but just keep that roughly in your mind because we'll talk about that up here when we go to this section right here. Just know that a global variable is a variable placeholder that you can use throughout any of your, basically almost anywhere in your API creations. So body, same thing, what you'd expect. I can pass in form data. I have, what's called form URL encoded data, raw data. And again, variables here, right? Raw data would be your JSON, if you will. Now we can define a variable here. Now, this is kind of important because it's really neat. I can pass in a header variable. I can pass in a key to say application type, and I can pass in the variable JSON. Or I can grab one of mine that we have in our global variables. Okay. The other thing too is I can return a variable. Now notice it has an idea of this JSON already. Secretly, I've already ran it once, but it has the most basic information I can do. And notice I have an underscore ID underscore name. We'll come back to this in a few seconds. Okay. But I don't want to do that right now because we're going to do that when we move over to workflows. Assertions. I can also put insertions in here. Assertions are your testing. And we're going to slow down a little bit because I'm moving a little bit too fast. And we're going to come back to these two. Let's go back to our basics. I have this. Let's go and just test it real quick and see what we have. Perfect. Now, on my response, I get all the basic information that I would expect for my API statistics. Remember that whole concept of being able to see in depth of our APIs and see how they're working, see how they're managing. So here I can see my response is 200, my message size, my absolute URL, my duration, how long did it take, my start time, my end time, that kind of stuff. Now, and here's the application JSON that I was talking about. You could pass in as well. Now, with this, I can see the response here. I can export this response and open it up in my developer tool, and I can see the JSON that was returned. So if my developers need to get a copy of this raw JSON, I could send it to them easily. Now, I could also send it as what we call a raw copy. Raw copy just means no white spaces. Developers like that because it doesn't take up as much room. Okay, I can hit copy and now it's in my clipboard. And again, the export is what you expect. These others are just views, but they're a little bit bigger. So if I have an embedded JSON, I can get basically a grid view of that data. So here I can see my return, but I can see my address is in what we would call an array, or basically embedded data. So now I get a really good flat view of what this data looks like. And it's really just out of the box, right? A couple of clicks. If I want to go to minified, which means remove white spaces, or beautify, which means this is what you expect to see. Again, I can export it and share it, and it's going to be the same thing you just saw, right? But basically, that's very useful for an example. If I'm doing tests or if developers just need to get a copy of this JSON for some reason, then they can do that and just export it. Now, with saying that, this is our JSON, our ID, our 10. This is our return. Now I want to look at assertions because now it's going to make sense to me. What if I say I'm expecting a response size or a time or even a status code? Right now we're testing as 200, but what I want to make sure it's not a 401, right? Which is an authorization issue, or maybe a 404, which is page not found. But what if I want to go a little bit deeper and say, you know what? What if I want the ID? Now this sees your JSON because we ran it. And it says, these are all the fields here. And I'm only pulling back JSON 10. So what if I want to test to make sure 10 is always in there? We'll go ahead and save it. And just like that, I now have an assertion that's going to run tests against my JSON. Okay, so we'll give it a few seconds to save. Now, the other thing you can do while that's saving is we'll go to performance test. We're going to see this when I do it in the workflow, but it takes a few seconds to run. I can run this test with an integration into BlazeMeter, and we'll look at that as well. But all in all, this is a pretty good, quick little test. The other thing I could do is I'm not going to log into this app every 5 minutes and test this API. Excuse me. I set up an assertion, but I want that assertion to be tested. So what I can do is I can schedule this. I can schedule to run every 5 minutes on every day. We'll talk about this in a few minutes. Apologize about that. Got a little choke there. Now, the other thing I can do is let's go ahead and save this because now we have this monitoring. We can do what's called threat protection. Now, threat protection is what you expect it to be. Threat protection is going to protect your URLs or your APIs, sorry. What if I want to test against an XML? I'm going to go from bottom to top. What if I want to test XML structure? Okay, what if I know my XML, or if I'm using SOAP or something like that? What if I want to validate that to make sure I don't have any people trying to hack into my systems through my APIs? I apologize about that. I'm getting choked over here. Drinking too much coffee too quick. What if I have a JSON schema and we want to validate that schema? Now that's very, very common, because if I'm a developer and if I'm writing back an expected response, and if you send me a response that I'm not expecting, then I should block it because it could be a potential hacker. If we look at JSON structure, what if I don't want it to be any deeper? Remember the whole array, that grid that you saw? What if I don't want it to be past 4 levels? Maybe I don't want the link to be too long. SQL injection. This one is very common. What if somebody's trying to pass in a SQL command like, I don't know, delete all users, right? Select all credit cards from count, right? So we want to block all that information. Same thing with code injection. What if they're trying to do a PHP injection inside of one of my gets? Okay, so these are very, very important. In fact, me personally, my background in software engineering, I think this should be mandatory on everything because that's how they get in. Message size. What if I want to block the message size that you're sending to me? Skipping IP range on purpose. We'll come back to it in a second. What if we're working in a sandbox and we're truly just developing Monday through Friday? So I don't want anything to happen Saturday and Sunday. So I really can say, you know what, just block everything Saturday and Sunday because I know we're not working those days. Okay. Or maybe we are, if, you know, a 8-hour day shop and we're working between these hours, right? So maybe we only want to do that. So I want to restrict anything from 5 p.m. till 8 a.m. the next day. Okay. Rate limit. Again, the same thing. What if I don't want my maximum requests to be? So another good hacking, it's not good. None of this is good. But another idea of what people would do is that piggyback off your messages and they would send more payload than your system can hold. And sometimes that would crash. Okay, so I could turn that off as well. Now, we're going to look at IP range just because that one kind of really makes sense. Here is the URL that you would share to your developers that's going to be protecting you with all these settings that you can set. And you can have as many as you want. So if I go over here, click on this, I'm just going to drop it up here. I'll paste it right there. I can see my metrics and my requests. Now, ignore all this other stuff. This is just binary stuff, right? This is part of how it works on the back end. But your developers may be looking at this. Okay. Now, if I come over here, and let me get back to APIStrong. And let's just, you can Google what's my IP. So I can grab this and we'll go over here and just post it right there. And we'll say, let's authorize it first. We'll save it. And it's going to take a few seconds to save because it's doing this magic behind the scenes for you. But what I'm going to expect is that I can be able to access this URL. If I can get that little window to go away. So if I go here and refresh, I can access the URL, right? That's what you're expecting. So what if I go over here and say, I don't know this guy. I don't trust this guy. We're going to tell him he didn't have access anymore. So that's going to take a few seconds. Now, while that's doing it, I can do it by range, right? I can also do it by content. So, and then you can have as many of these as you want. I hit the plus and I can have another one up here. So you're not limited to just one, because let's be honest, you're not going to know the people's IPs, right? Now, if I come in here and refresh, let me grab the URL. And we'll just post it right here. And now if you look, I am banned from this IP range, which means I cannot get into this API. That one really makes sense because if somebody's trying to get into my back door using my APIs, then I could just block them out. The best thing about this is it really took a couple of seconds to do, right? So now if I go back, I'm going to close this. I keep opening it by accident. So if I go back over here and say, well, all right, I know this guy, he's a pretty cool guy. We're going to save this again. And now while this is saving, if you don't know what any of this stuff is, that's fair because there's a lot of good information. I'll show you in a few seconds. You can click on these little eyes things. And then you can actually run this. We give you a sandbox to give this a try. So let me prove that point real quick, and then we'll come back to that. Let me just go ahead and grab this. And I could just refresh the one we had, but it's just, there we go. Now I have access again. Okay. Really that simple. If I come in here and say, well, what is message size? I can click on it and get a pop-up. I can also click on this, and now I have a little sandbox that explains a little bit better, and I can give it a try right here and see what my return is. Message size is too large. So as you're moving through this, there may be things you don't know, and there's a lot of help along the way, and we're going to help you with that. So don't worry about that. Now, if you think about it, we started this with a really basic API. We added some, well, start from here. We didn't add any of this, but we did add assertions. We added some tests. We're able to see and view our information. We didn't do a performance test, but I'll show you how that works in a few. But we did set up a threat protection. Okay, and it really hasn't taken us that long to do, less than 5 minutes, maybe, while I'm talking. Now, with that, your APIs really aren't much if you don't have KPIs, key point indicators. So, of course, we can set up alerts. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And, of course, I can turn those alerts off or suppress them if we're doing something like maintenance or something like that. So, with saying that, let's move up here for a second. We'll get to these in a bit. But I'm going to go ahead and look at our global settings. Because, again, just to recap, we took an API. We were able to get the information, the JSON. We're able to view it in different types of views that make sense not only to us, but to our peers or maybe somebody else, right? This is so much easier to read than this or this, right? So then you come over here with a couple of clicks, I can block certain people from actually using that API from outside our systems. I can also set alerts, maintenance, and I can schedule it. And this is really just a couple of seconds. Well, I keep saying a couple of seconds, about 5 minutes. So if I come over here, though, the reason I'm repeating that is because we're going to kind of move away from this, but come back to it in a few minutes. And we're going to talk about these because, yeah, you're going to say, well, Tim, that's great for this API, but I'm not going to know all the APIs. Well, that's why you would create a domain, and you can do it globally. Okay, I have a test domain. And then you can create a domain and set all this for, your whole environment. So let's say we've got a dev environment or a sandbox or maybe a D zone where we're working on some code. So I can come in here and do the same thing, set this up, and it will work for the whole domain. On top of that, we can set up the global alerts. Okay, that will reach everything. So if I go in here and just create an alert, I give it a name. I can suppress the emails. I can, send SMS, and I can create as many as I want. So do I want it to be, let me know if I get a 401. Okay. How many times we're going to send the email, I save it, so forth. If we look at the default one, you get one out of the box, and it did set up for all your basic, right? So let me know if I get a 500, a 400, a 404, or a 401, right? So let's go ahead and close that. That you get automatically. If we go in here, maintenance modes, I can turn these off, like I said. So if I'm going to maybe restart our servers in this dev environment, or I don't want to be alerted because we're doing some massive testing, right? So we can turn that off there. And then the one that I want to focus on is this global variable. So now I deleted this one. Let me go and delete this one. A global variable can be used anywhere throughout your project, right? So if let's just say we have one called username, and I like using the naming convention as underscore. You don't have to, but it's just a way to see it. And we'll just say the variable is Tim, create variable. And just like that, I now have one that I can use throughout the system. So if you saw earlier where it had the two kind of curly brackets, right? Now I can reference this, and anywhere this is referenced, I use this value. Now that comes into play, like my key my user ID. Let's say I'm running a lot of these APIs and I don't really want to type in the, the username and password every time, then especially this kind of key, right? Because it's going to be a big key. Then I can save it in as a variable and just put that in. So with the global variables, I'm going to click on the APIs, just kind of show you what they look like. Here in the APIs, I can see everyone that I have access to. If I go in here, what do we call this? Tim's developers. I can see the one that I have access to. Okay. And I can have as many of these pop-ups as I want. Okay. And I can modify, I'm trying to close that one. And I can modify these from here. I can duplicate them. I can delete them. I can do whatever I want to do. I can just run it. Just say, okay, hey, Tim, we got this API. We need to test it real quick. How about giving it a run and make sure everything's valid? Okay, I can just run it real quick, right? And then with saying that, you started with a basic API. Let me show you this real quick. If I come in here, now these double brackets, let's say I do authorization and we're going to do a bear token. And I really don't want to type that out. That's great. Now that you see this drop down, these are all my global variables. So now I can just put that one in. And now it's going to pass it. Now, truthfully, that's Tim. That's not going to do anything, but that's what that is. Okay. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. Now, the reason I'm kind of pausing is because I'm trying not to go too fast and I'm trying not to jump around too much, because a lot of this builds up on top of itself. You start with a project, you create an API. With the API, we have some global settings we can set up. The global variables are very important when you talk about workflows. The concept of a workflow is I now can execute my APIs in an order. Okay. So a lot of times you're not testing just one API. Let's think about a login scenario. I need to go off. I need to log in. It's going to hit the database. It's going to return a valid user. That user probably has some form of ID and password that I've got to pass to the next URL just to get the data that I need. Okay. And that's what we've kind of pseudo built out here. Now, a better example is I was working with Broadcom's release automation and I was working to the APIs of it. And the problem with it is in order to use the APIs, which is a great engine, but in order to do that, you have to run them in order because each one builds on the other. So in other words, the ID from this one, let's say the IDs from your user goes into projects, projects ID comes out, it goes into use cases comes out, it goes into test cases. So there's this whole process it has to go through, but you can't run just one. And by the time you've ran the user one to get access, that token has already expired. So the way around that is to build a workflow. Now the workflow is great. Again, the reason I showed you the APIs a few minutes ago is I've got 110, but I can filter these, right? And not only can I filter them, but I can also relate them to my project, okay? I can just drag them over, or I can just create a new one, add a step. Adding a step is just like building out your API. The only difference is now I can do a file and we can upload from a CSV, okay? So let's go back to here. And I don't want to do this because we're going to click on this one. And now this is create pet. Now, if anybody's done a lot of programming, especially Java, this is kind of the hello world, right? Because pet store's been around probably as long as I have. But this is just a pet store online that we can test and play with. Headers, pretty straightforward. Again, I can pass in the variables if I want to. The body, here we're doing the post. Remember your methods. And I'm passing in this raw JSON string to create a pet for me. And then here, defining the variables, I can return a variable that I then can pass into here. And we're going to look at that in a few minutes because I can also do assertions here as well. Okay, this is all just right here. So let's go ahead and run this real quick so you can kind of see what it looks like. Notice this one runs. It's going to take a few seconds because it's really going on the web. It's creating the pet. This delete's going to fail, and that's fine because we want at least one failure so you can see it truly work. All right, so give it a second. It's up, bounce down to here. It's going to bounce to here. Now I can close these and get to them. So we'll update pet. So, and now it's now running the delete one, and that one's going to fail. That's fine. I don't remember. Oh, so I lied. It didn't fail. Interesting. Okay. So, but now I can see each step, right? Create pet, update pet. There was no return on the post, so there's no post there. but I can see each work just fine. Now, if I come in here again, if I click on this, let's click on this get, because maybe update. Let's see, let's click on update. Now, what I can do is I have this thing called data mapping. So now you didn't get it here because there's nothing to map to. Okay. You could get it here, but there's only one level. So what that means is not only do I have these global tokens that I could use to load my system, which, you see them everywhere. Again, I could do the equals like we did earlier. I can define a variable. So if I want my return to be an ID, now that can be saved. And now I can use that in any of these other steps. Well, obviously the steps after it, okay? Because it wouldn't be loaded until it runs. Now here in data mapping, I can say, great, but my IDs in the JSON don't really equal itself. So let's look at the stuff from get pet. And now in here, let's see which one. Yeah, here we go. So here I can say this ID equals ID. This category equals category. Now you don't have to do this if it's one-to-one, but let's say this core category ID is not category ID. I want it to be the first ID. So now I just tied it to it. And that is how you map moving between each of these steps. So let's go ahead. I want to clear this out because I don't want it to really go crazy on me because I really don't know what the data is. But the truth is I could run it and it would either fail or pass, right? Now, again, here you have all the basic stuff. I do have my responses that we return. I can see the history. Now we'll get to reports in a few seconds. Monitoring, I can schedule this workflow to run whenever I want it to. We'll turn it off. I can create a new one, right? And it looks just like you did before. I can set alerts on this one. So let me know, send an email if this one fails, okay? And a performance test. So we'll talk about this in just a few seconds because this takes a few seconds to kick off. You know what? Let's go ahead and kick it off. Then I'll talk. So that's going to take just a few seconds because it's really integrating with BlazeMeter, and it's going to do a load test based off of our workflow. So if you have to remember the steps, we first created a project. We created our API. We could group our APIs together, not only inside the project, but we can build a workflow to make them run, in steps. Within those, we also have this ability to pass in a global variable that can be passed between each step. Now this opened up to BlazeMeter, so don't panic. And it's kicking off BlazeMeter to run my performance test. Now, while that's running, I'll go back over here because this is done. It's going to run in the background right here. Let's close this one and leave this one open because it's running. Now, on top of that, on our APIs, not only did we create this workflow, but we also set up threat protection that keeps people from maliciously getting into our APIs and doing damages to our system, right? So let's go over here and look at our reports. So the first one is API summary. And here I can filter down by my project. Okay. I can filter down. If I had more APIs, I can click here and I can see what's going on. Just a quick view. 200s. Let's say this one failed. That's fine. This little arrow means it was using threat protection. That one failed because I put in my IP and I blocked it. These, the little calendars, are schedules, and this is manually. Okay. So I can export this to a CSV if I wanted to, and you can share this grid with whoever. API usage. This is pretty common sense, but I can look at how much APIs we've used in the last 2 months. An audit log. Some companies we've dealt with in the past need to keep track of users and which users did what settings. So you can do that. Unfortunately, I'm the only user, so there's nothing to look at here. Monitoring. Give it a second to load. This is the monitoring is going to be your scheduler, right? So I've got this one that runs every 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off, or I can just delete it. Not a big deal. But I have these others that are running as well every 5 minutes. You can set that. It's a schedule, right? So it's what you expect as a schedule. You can set it to run at different times. If I have workflows, these are workflows that are running as a scheduler. And these are APIs that are running a scheduler. Okay. I can also export this and share it if I need to. Now, if we go down to what is this, monitoring, if we go to performance, Your performance reports are very handy if you're using BlazeMeter. Notice it's still in progress. If I'll go up and look, this one is running this BlazeMeter test against our workflow. Now, if you know anything about BlazeMeter, we have videos out there. We can help you move forward if you go that path. But BlazeMeter is a really nice performance monitoring tool if you've never seen it. But again, we're not going to get into that just because that's a different topic. Now, if I go back over here, the good news is, let's close this. Now, I just closed BlazeMeter. I'm going to close all these other tabs as well because I don't really need them. Just get some good, clean real estate. But I'm going to click on this. And this is going to take me right to my test. Pretty awesome. So now that was our performance. If I go down to threat protection, I can see that this one had attacks. We had 5 attacks here. And it was all, whoops, I didn't mean to click on it. Let me see if I can go back. My 5 attacks, what I was trying to show is the bottom of the grid, is it's all IP range. Okay, so now if I click on it, it takes me into where I can see this one had 1 that failed. This one had 3, 2. If I click into it, of course, I'm just drilling in, right? That's all we're doing. It's taking me to where the settings was. Now I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to go ahead and just go back over here. And I'm going to go to show all. Show all is probably my favorite. What did we name ours? Well, these are flows. Say the little double things. And these are post gets. So delete pet. So what I'm going to do is, oh, I see mine, but we're going to go ahead and just filter by Tim. And we're going to say, I think I called it Tim Demo, maybe. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll click on this one, as long as this one has data, right? None of those do. All right. So let's back up and maybe this one. I'm pretty big about forgetting to name it, and it just picks the default name of something like this. But here in the test, I can see, a line of how things were running, how it was good. And of course, this isn't really physically running because it's just me kicking it off. But if you had people using it, right, you'd see more lines and just fill it in. So here's, yeah, this is one we did. I just didn't name it a good name. But here, I can see this one ran a few seconds ago. It was a scheduler. Everything's passing. This might not be the one we ran, but that's okay. Tomato. Here I can see the statistics. I can see my assertion. Yeah, this is the one we ran because one we had assertions in it. Let's see if this one's got assertions. Yeah, this one failed. So let's look at this one. This was 6 days ago, but it's fine. It looks like I was trying to match on where the name contains this name, and it obviously didn't. So it failed. So that's where I would see my assertions. Okay. Now I can see alerts, right? Whatever alerts we have set up, 500, 400, none of them were kicked off. So that's good. And of course I can see the threat protection. Let's go back over here, click here and see if we have any threat protection here. But the report should give you everything you need to know just looking at your API. I guess I could have looked at the dates. So these are part of this. So it should be this one. Now, with saying that, that covers the reports. We talked about the APIs, the projects, right? So if I click again on the API, in the API, I can create the API. Then we can move on to actually executing over here, the report based off that API, right? So let's see. It's just complaining because I got too many. It's trying to keep up with my caching, right? So if most people have it, it's fine, but I'm the only one over here. So I'm kind of playing with it too much. So again, if we can say new project, we can create a workflow from here. I like showing you the workflow from the previous one because it just makes more sense, and creating the API. You can also import your APIs. So if you're using a product like Postmon, then you can import it in from there. If you have a Swagger, you can import them from there. Now, if I go over here to home, the home should make more sense because now it's broken down similar to our reports. We have the 5 most run APIs, okay? We also have our 5 failed APIs, so I can see them quickly here, okay? And again, I can see this is our developer test, this one we did a few minutes ago. Our status was a 401, which means unauthorized, and I can see that it was used by using threat protection, okay? These were kicked off by using scheduler, and they were all 404s. There's a lot of testing in here. So a lot of these, and it's done on purpose. So we can see this data. Then over here, just trying to see if I can, whoops, developers test. Yeah, so we're not one of the top 5s, but if we were, you would see it over here. Now, if I click on this one again, this will take me back to the details of here. This is the one we created. And again, just to sum it up, we created our API. We can do the basic stuff that you would expect, right? Authorization, headers, bodies, those are kind of out of the box. Wouldn't be a good tool if we couldn't do those things. But we can also define variables that can be shared and used. I can get variables back and use them in other places. This sees all the variables that I have inside my JSON, right? So I can save all that back, and I accidentally hit back button on my mouse. I can set up testing if I want to. Here we can notice equals 10, okay? And I can save that there. Now, I'll go ahead and just delete those. And then the same with our performance test, we can kick off a performance test with BlazeMeter. Now, with saying that, we can set up threat protection. We can set the rate limit, the time of day. We can block an IP range, which you saw how easy that was. Same with message sizes. If I go in here and make a change like this and just hit save, then guess what? It's that simple. I now have that protecting us, coming through us being general, coming through my APIs. Okay. Monitoring. I can easily set up, well, I can do it from here too. I can easily set up a schedule to run at a certain time. Now, same thing, KPIs, alerts. I can turn the alerts off, and I can view the history of this one just by clicking on it. Now I can see I've got some more boo-boos, which is perfectly fine. Okay, this was developer trying to come in. This is the one I was just playing with a few seconds ago. So if I click on it, I can come over here and look and see what the threat protection was. And now 22 minutes ago, we had a 401 failed, and it was this person, this IP address. So now I can give this to my security team and say, hey, we've seen, now normally it's not going to be an IP address, right? Probably like a range or, something like that. But I can send this now to my security team and say, hey, this section of people are trying to get through our system using our APIs. And it really only took me a few seconds to set up. Notice it's green and it tells me it's still on and it's still reporting. Now, with saying that, I'm going to kind of walk you through some of the basics. Let me get back to here. So we showed you the help that you had on your threat protection, because we're going to assume that some of this, you might want a little bit more information, like rate limit. What does that mean? If I click here, I get definition. I can click here and get more information. And we can even run a test by running this, try my demo. Okay, just click and now I'm in a demo. I can run this. I can change these values and run this and see what it brings back. Now, with saying that, I'm going to now jump over here. We have a really good help here. I'll cover in a few seconds, but I want to cover this area, and then we'll talk about how easy all this was. So pretty common sense what personal settings are. If you want to change, I probably should change my time zone, but I don't care. Change my password, all that good stuff. The account, the best thing about the account is I can, like, this would be my company, right? And then I give it a better name. Then I can invite people to be part of my domain. Okay. And then I can set what they are. For an example, if I just, and I want him to be an admin and invite. And now I will get an email saying that you have been invited to join this domain. Now, integrations. As you saw earlier, we have the BlazeMeter, but we also have a Slack integration, right? It's right out of the box. We have the generic API key. And I say generic because this is a lot of companies use this, right? So you can generate your own key, and then you can use it with other applications like Broadcom CDD, Broadcom's release automation. It doesn't have to be Broadcom, right? Jenkins. There's a lot of integrations that you can do that uses the API key secret, right? So you can generate your own key. And then you also have the BlazeMeter integrations where I can just go into BlazeMeter. It's kind of BlazeMeter, it's kind of the same thing. You create a key and then you come over here and enter in these keys and then you save it, and that's your connection. We have a CI/CD integration. I mentioned earlier about CDD. You could use the API key for CDD, but we also have Azure DevOps pipeline as well. So there's other ways that you can get to it from there. Excuse me. Now, let's look at help, I guess. The help is a very, very detailed help. Okay. So if I want to know how workflows work, I can click here and do a step-by-step. And not only will it show me step-by-step, but it will also give me best practices of what we found. For an example, here you can upload a file and export a file. This one they're using Clarity Input, which is another Broadcom tool. Now, if we go down, let's see. So I'm trying to think, user management. Let's look at threat protection. Now the threat protection is kind of used with the other one that you saw, but I can come through here and I can zoom down and it talks about all this. So if I want to know more about JSON schema validation, I want to validate against a certain schema. Okay. So it's a very good place to start. If you kind of am not sure about something, you can always open up a ticket with us, or you can just look at the guide and see if it helps. The other thing here is you can go here, and I really like this feature. If I do a quick tour, what if I'm just on this page and I just really want to know what's going on? You know, let's go back to the beginning. And what if I just want to create an API, but I'm really not sure where to start? The only thing I did was took all the other APIs out. So I can come over here and I can say, give me a quick tour, great little help thing here that will bounce. Oh, I said skip. I'm sorry. A little great thing here to show me where to do and what to do next, like naming the API, giving a description, setting up the configuration. Here's a little verb on how it works, skip. So in a nutshell, that is there to help you as well. It's a very straightforward little add-on that can help you. And of course, we always have the ability to email us, chat with us, whatever you need to do from there. Now, with saying that, that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's a lot to it, but the simplicity is what makes it beautiful. Okay. Because again, this is my dashboard. I can create APIs all day long. I can add threat protection on those APIs at an API level or at a global level. I can also monitor these APIs, and I can monitor anything, right? Within reason. And when I say anything, we can monitor the APIs, we can monitor the workflows, we can monitor the threat protection, but I have monitoring in there to help me. I can set up my alerts. I can turn those alerts off. It's nothing more cumbersome than when you're working and you got to take a server down for maintenance, and all of a sudden you get 500 emails saying the server's down, which you already knew. So you can turn those off. And of course, we keep a really good tracking of everything that's going on. So you have your reports, you have your history, you have all that to help you. So with saying that, I'm going to kind of cheat, and we're going to go back over here and we're going to open this back up. Now, we talked about the threat protection, how easy it is, right? How simple it is to set up the threat protection on a single level and on a global level to protect you from people trying to get in through your APIs into your system and do very bad things, to be honest with you. So you have real-time insights. We can see what's running on the agents immediately, right? We can kick off the agents. We can see the workflows. I'm sorry. We can kick off the agents. We can see the message size. We can see, any statistics that we want based off that API. Now, we also can set up monitoring to where we can set our APIs or our workflows to run on a schedule to basically go off and, run when we need to test them the most. For an example, what if it's Black Friday coming up? You really don't want your developers in there just running these APIs like crazy. Maybe I want to set up a 24/7 run to where my APIs can run and come back with a 404 or something like that. Or better case, I could use integrations. I can integrate with BlazeMeter, and I can do a performance test with my workflows, which is over here, of my APIs, and connect that to a scheduler to run before Black Fridays to see if we have any spike leaks or anything like that. And then I can share that with my team. So that is how all this can work together for you and hopefully make your API life a lot simpler than just putting APIs and testing them. So, Cami, I'm going to open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you, Tim, for all that info. Yeah, we can take questions at this time. Just a reminder, you can type your questions in the Q&A box located in your control panel. And we'll wait just a few seconds here to see if anyone has any questions. But any last words, Tim, before we take questions?
No, I hope it was very useful. If a question does come up later, you can obviously reach out to us. On the screen now is the easiest ways, other than going to the browser itself and going APIStrong IO. You can reach out to us these ways as well. So again, if you don't remember this, just go to APIStrong IO and just go in there and play around. There's a lot of good information in there.
Yeah, thank you for that, Tim. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions right now, so we can go ahead and end the webinar, but thank you, Tim, for leading it, and thank you everyone for joining today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at any time. Have a great day, everyone.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.